everybody. It's Rocco Million. Oh, wait a minute. I got this dumb thing on here now. Unreal. Okay. One second. Hello, everybody. This is Rocco Million. I'm about to be debating a person, Freeman Michaels, running for Congress in California. And he is an MMT denier. So he did a YouTube video about MMT where he got a lot of stuff wrong. So I wanted him to come on so that I could educate him and tell him where he's wrong. Since he is going to be running for Congress, it's very important that he understands, first of all, when you want to discuss a topic, you should understand what that topic even says. So let me see if I can get him on here now. We had some problems earlier. Freeman Michaels. Okay, here we go. Let's go, Freeman. You could get in now, brother. I just invited you. Okay. You were running for Congress. Oh, that's too bad. Well, I mean, I would say it's too bad, but you have to understand, anybody running for Congress needs to understand how federal financing works, or else they're going to be part of the problem anyway. So I'm sorry to say, but you're probably not ready for that step. I don't mean to be smart or arrogant, but it's just a fact, you know. So I sent you an invitation. It should be coming, or you should see a white icon at the bottom of the screen where you could join in to the broadcast, and we could get right into this. And I could help you understand what exactly you're getting wrong, because just listening to the first few minutes of your YouTube video about MMT, you got a lot wrong. And I can help you because a lot of this is simple logic. So you don't see a link. Okay, log off and then log right back on. Assume what was finances? No, I'm saying I don't assume anything. I'm saying if you don't understand how federal finances work, then you're not fit to be running for office in the first place. And judging by your first video on MMT, you don't understand how federal financing works. And I don't say that to be arrogant or cocky or a dickhead. It's just a statement of fact. MMT is our operational reality today. Every time government spends or taxes, it is using MMT. That's just a fact. So, there's nothing to implement. Either MMT, the knowledge of our operational reality, can be used against the public purpose for the profits of the 1%, like it is now, or it could be used for the public purpose. And if the public doesn't understand that reality, you could bet it will be used against us. So, all right, let's see. Okay. There you go. Okay. Okay, he should be coming on momentarily. I got him. He says it's adding. So it looks like we may have our little debate after all. Awesome. Hey, how you doing? How you doing, Freeman?
Good. I had a nice microphone all set up, and it said I had to use iOS and not my laptop. So
yeah, that's the thing. this Facebook, it really messes with us. I can't even add people on when I use the CPU. I got to use the phone, so that is a problem.
Let me, I'm
Um,
gonna prop this thing up, so give me a second.
yeah, no problem.
Fuck this thing. Am I allowed to swear?
Yes, yes, you are. This is a people's program. We're not afraid of the people's language.
Yeah, I just came from an event, and it's like I swear, but then the kid sat down at the table, and I started saying some shit. Anyway, all right, good enough.
Yeah. Well, I don't think too many kids will be watching economic shows, so I think
No,
we're good on that front.
imagine.
I wish they would. I wish they would.
Well,
But
honestly, it's weird. Like I see a lot of the youth. Like some are interested, but a lot of people are. Um, it's like they've been conditioned to use their phones, and they're just stuck on their phones, and they forgot how to socialize. And I sound like this old geezer that says that, but I've seen a lot of people. I'm like, oh my God, they absolutely could be led to the slaughter. And then here's a group of people that they're woke as fuck, and then they're fighting. And then there's a bunch of people that are saying, oh my God, it's hopeless, and we're just going to party it off the rest of our life. And I
yeah,
just see all these different groups, and it's fascinating. It's when you get older, it's like you start to recognize the different patterns.
I do too. I'm 38 now, and I used to be on the right. I used to be a right wing
Mm.
guy. I used to be a Republican. When I was in the Navy, I voted for Bush twice. And I used to
Wow.
argue with my hippie mother. I used to argue with my hippie mother that we have to fight them over there, so we don't fight them over here.
I
I
remember
was
that
completely
line.
brainwashed.
I remember that
Yeah, I
line.
was complete. I was completely brainwashed, as we all are, from birth to different degrees.
Yes.
And so, well, let's jump right into this MMT.
Yes.
When I was looking at your YouTube video,
Mm.
I saw a few things that got me
Let let
right
let
off the bat.
let me first adjust maybe an expectation on that video. And it was
Okay.
I named it MMT and fiat currency, but it was generally a discussion about money and the transfer of wealth and how that moves about, as opposed to MMT and the MMT policies specifically. Because you're right, MMT has already been there. And a lot of what people are pushing, I see with MMT, is that they're basically saying we're going to nationalize the Fed, or more or less, they're going to print money and give it to people, as opposed to print money and loan it to people and make us in debt. I mean, I haven't looked it up recently, but that was the general gist of
Okay.
it. Is that
Let,
your understanding?
well, no, let's go step by step. No,
Sure.
MMT never says printing money because the federal government never prints money to spend.
Can,
All dollars are created by congressional decree. That's a
well,
law
here,
from thin air.
but here's my one contention. I don't really care so much about the details. It's more about, like, if you worry about the Fed versus the member banks versus Congress. To me, it's all the same nebulous thing to people because they don't have a say in it, and it affects the wealth and the price of their labor. And so it doesn't matter if someone prints it, creates it, loans it, shoves it up your ass and give it over here. The fact is that the people, the wealth there's so much wealth on the planet, and if you print more money and give it to one group, as a percentage, the group that didn't get that money now has less wealth. And so it doesn't matter if you print, create, or whatever. And so to me, it's like I
Well,
like to get past all the minor nuances and just get into the pure topic of how wealth is transferred from people to others.
Well, and believe me, we will get there. But we have to understand printing is a gold standard operation. We're not on the gold standard operation.
Okay.
Go-
I guess I don't know why that's an important sticking point.
well, let me tell you. Let
Okay.
me tell you. Because when we think of printing money,
Mm-hmm.
we start to think of Milton Friedman's money multiplier theory.
Mm-hmm.
And the more money you spend, it devalues money. It's all false. It's all baloney. Okay, that hasn't been the case since we were on the gold standard. Okay, money is not finite, and spending more money doesn't have to be inflationary now. It's all about matching supply and demand.
Yes.
Okay, so that's where we're at now. All dollars are created by congressional decree from thin air, and that's per Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Dollars only become cash when we demand cash from our bank accounts. The majority of the money supply is actually digital.
Yeah.
But, you know, we'll get into this stuff more and more. Now, about the Fed. The Fed, what people don't understand is the Fed is actually a public institution. It's not private. It doesn't print money either. It doesn't make money. The Fed has what we call monetary authority. Monetary authority is the interest rate, the cost of private credit. They can stretch the money supply, but they cannot add net dollars to the money supply or subtract net dollars. All the Fed can do is work with the net money supply set by Congress using fiscal policy, which is superior to monetary policy in every way. So when people think that the private banksters are the problem, they're not understanding our operational reality. When Congress starves the economy or the 99% of public spending, the only other option we have is monetary policy of the Federal Reserve and private credit to balance the economy. That's bad because it always leads to booms, busts, and bailouts that only help the rich. And government has to move into a big deficit position anyway to help the rich. So we say if government deficit's enough up front, targeting true full employment with a federally guaranteed living wage job for everyone who wants one, then the Federal Reserve and private credit is irrelevant. People aren't dependent on private credit to begin with. People aren't vulnerable to predatory lending to begin with. So that's the main factor.
Yeah.
Even if we thought that the Fed was private and there was this conspiracy, the end result is Congress is the problem and Congress is the solution. If they spend enough, we don't need private credit. And there's nothing the Fed could do about that. Now, when we look at, we have to understand sectoral balances. The government's debt is our surplus in the non-government. Okay, so when the government deficits, we're talking about a spreadsheet operation. The government is on one side of the ledger. The non-government is on the other side of the ledger. When the government deficits, that means it's spending more into the non-government than it's taking back out. So it's recorded as a government deficit on the government side of the ledger, and on the non-government side of the ledger, it's recorded as a surplus. Now, if you add both sides of those together, the positive and the negative, it always nets to zero. So if the government deficit's 10, then the non-government by accounting identity has a surplus of plus 10. And if you add both sides together, they net to zero. This is important because this explains, the ruling class has their biggest scare tactic is about the national debt.
Yeah,
and they say it's a burden on the future generations, and it's going to kill us all. China's going to own us all, or we have to borrow dollars from the Federal Reserve. Blah 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 blah. It's all bull. Okay, the fact of the matter is the national debt is just a record of all dollars in existence. So right now, the national debt means we have about $20 trillion in existence. It's never a burden on society or the monetarily sovereign government. The real burden would be if our national debt was zero. Then we would have $0 in existence. And then we'd have to it would be dependent on private credit, So these are the distinctions that make a big difference. To blame the private sector is not to understand the government's role as the currency issuer. Do you understand that so far?
I do, and I disagree with so much of it. I was kind of like, I'm not quite sure where to start.
Okay, all right, let's hear it.
I think the biggest piece that I was hearing that I feel like you're missing is the propensity for corruption. And I think that's a big problem in almost every system that we've ever heard. And whether or not that's capitalism, government, socialism, communism, or whatever, if you don't take into account human beings' propensity for corruption, all the rules in the world don't mean shit. And the Constitution doesn't mean shit if enough money wants to change it. And so for someone to say this is the Fed can only do this because there's a delineation between them and this group, and there's a delineation between them and Congress, to me, that ignores the reality that human beings can be led along by a carrot. And if the whole system is built upon money, which in general right now is built upon war and dollars for oil and all that crap, but effectively everyone in Congress and everyone lobbying is all chasing money for their own personal growth. And it doesn't matter any rules that preceded that, because you can get human beings to do whatever you want if you lead them around with this carrot. And to me, that's the bigger problem. So when you have a top-down centralized authority that's in any way a closed system, you haven't accounted, not you personally, anyone has not accounted for the propensity for corruption. And I think as society advances and gets more complex, the agony of failures can far outweigh the thrill of victory on that one, especially with the technology as it is. And what I mean by that is, back in the day, to spy on someone, you had to have someone go and sit there and listen to it. So you could only control so many people because you had to spy on everyone physically. And now that, the NSA can do that and archive it and have some AI post-analyze it, and once you decide someone's a threat, you can go back and pull up their history and analyze all their internet work. So it's like the propensity for corruption is that much bigger now with technology. And I feel like all of these systems, anytime there's a centralized authority, whether or not it's Congress, executive branch, judicial branch, Fed, all of these clowns, they don't account for the propensity of corruption. And so it doesn't matter whatever rules you set up, it's not going to work.
Okay. Well, now I was just explaining our operational reality.
Yes.
I said nothing about corruption. In reality, our government is constitutionally mandated to work for the general welfare. That doesn't mean it's going to. In fact, our government, works for the private profits of the 1% at society's expense.
For sure.
It's up to us collectively to force the issue. And the ruling class right now, they maintain their power through an illusion. And they do this with right-wing neoliberal lies that were designed to keep us divided. They say things like, we need the private sector funds government,
right,
with taxes and bond sales. They say that. And this is for a reason, because if people think that government is broke, then they're not going to rise up and demand government satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare, because it can't. But the fact of the matter is far different. Now, we are guaranteed government for, of, and by the people, but if we accept government working for the private profits of the capitalist class at society's expense, they're going to give us fascism every time. That's not the system's fault. That's our fault.
Well, I would argue that's the natural logical outcome.
And that's with any system. There will always be private forces that always try to corrupt and take private power for themselves at society's expense. That's any system, anywhere,
any capitalist
all the
system.
time.
Capitalist.
Any system, period. Socialism, communism, it doesn't matter. We've seen the Soviet system that was supposedly communist, but their government worked for the private purpose of themselves at society's expense. So that's not socialism. Real socialism is what America is by the Constitution. It is a government working for the general welfare of society, a democratically, socially owned government.
But there are no set of rules that, at least I've seen anyone come up with, that can take into account human beings' propensity for corruption. And when you have that's why communism may have been sounded great on paper, but when you get down to it, people are fucking lazy. If they don't have to work, they won't. And socialism may sound great because the wealth inequality is awful, but at the end of the day, people are corruptible at the top. And libertarians may sound great on paper because, free market, you can just do whatever you want, but they don't take into account that people are greedy pieces of shit sometimes, and that the big eat the little, and all of a sudden you're not going to have an open free market, you're going to have Walmart and Target, or MSNBC, ABC, CBS, Fox as your news. And I think all of these systems don't take into account what human being behavior is actually going to do in that system. They always say, well, if we just get out and vote and we just do all these things just right, it's going to work. I'm like, well, when have we ever done that? It's like we don't do it. So
Oh,
let's stop pretending that we're
we
going
have
to.
done this many, many times throughout history.
Hmm.
Nixon didn't want to give us the EPA. People power made that happen.
I
After the Great Depression, you think the ruling class wanted to give up the full employment policies
I
of
don't.
the New Deal?
Let me
Hell
let me
no.
say this.
People power
Let me
made
say
that
this.
happen.
The true people power that I'm talking about has never been happened in recorded history. So maybe that's a definitional problem that you and I have, where I'm setting my goals on human beings having a hell of a lot more power than they would with any top-down institution. And so
Human
perhaps maybe I
beings,
think that's probably a difference, because
well,
it's not so much. Go ahead.
we're saying the same thing basically, but I'm telling you, we the people have all the power right now. Right now,
Really?
we can force our socially owned government to do anything we want. The
How?
majority always simply by staying home from work. Without the majority working, America grinds to a halt.
Right,
One
but no
day,
one's going to
if the
do that.
working, well, it doesn't matter if they do, and they
It
have done it throughout
No,
history.
see, but that's
Like
my
I
point.
said, to get the New Deal policies, they did it. To get the EPA, they did it. To stop the
Right,
Vietnam War, they did it.
right,
To stop slavery, they did it.
right.
This is
And
all the ruling class has never given us justice
oh, I
for
agree.
out of the kindness of their heart.
I agree.
We have
And
always had to force the issue.
right, and these are all minor advances, good things for humanity,
Minor
but
stopping slavery. We
compared
went
to
from
what
a
I want
Great
humanity to
Depression.
be, yes.
We all want better, but that don't mean stop fighting today. But we
I'm
went
not
from a
saying
Great
stop fighting.
Depression.
I'm saying
We
accept
went from a
reality.
we went. This is the reality. Is what I'm saying.
No,
We went from a Great
reality is that
Depression
human beings
to
are
the number
corruptible.
one. And I admit that. That's why we have a system of checks and balances. This
That
is
don't
why we have
work.
a social.
They don't
No,
work.
it does
We've
work
been at
if
war
the
for
people work
93%
it.
of our history.
If the Because the people allow it. The people collectively allow
Because
it.
that's
If
human
we didn't
behavior.
work, if we stayed home, then guess what? There would be no ands, ifs, or buts about it. We would have the full employment policies of the
Right.
New Deal again.
But
Today,
everything you're
we
saying
could
has an
balance.
if. And the thing is
Well,
that people don't do
anything we got
that.
to do has an if. But anything we have to do has an if, and people do it. We've seen this throughout history.
But we
We
didn't
stopped
win.
slavery.
We
We
didn't
got the
win.
full employment policies.
We didn't
There will
win.
all we'll never have a utopia. We're never going to win. The
I
struggle is
disagree.
infinite.
I disagree.
So you think somehow human behavior is going to change, and there's not going to be private forces out there that want to consolidate power for their own uses at society's expense? You
If
think
you
that's a
if you incentivize the populace from the get-go in a different manner other than, hey, what do you want to be in your real life? You're going to grow up and be a capitalist, or you're going to grow up and try and serve the population. If you change the focus to say, okay, now for 20 hours a month, we are going to focus on our community and making our community self-sufficient and independent, such that when Monsanto says your food has to have this in it, or the FDA says this food isn't safe, you can't grow it, or you can't grow this plant, your community will have the food in your community because you've done it and you focused on it. Like, there is an easy
but
shift
that's still an
that
if.
can be
That's
done.
still
Like,
an if.
human beings have not always organized themselves in capitalism. It's just that now we've just, like that whole boiling frog thing, or how do you trap a wild boar? We all just assume that when you grow up, you're going to be a capitalist. And even right there, you said it. It's like we all have to do jobs, this and this and this. And that's not how human beings have to live.
I'm
So that's
against
not how our
capitalism.
behavior has to be.
I'm against capitalism.
Me
If I
too.
could snap my fingers today and make the means socially owned, I would do that. But the fact of the matter is, people don't understand this. There is no free market besides the black market.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's true.
Capitalism only exists in the private sector, and only to the extent our socially owned government allows.
That's true.
Nobody even owns property in America. We
know.
all rent. We
I know.
all buy. We all pay tax.
It's so jacked. And you know, to make it worse, the public property, this is so disturbing to me. The public property is effectively owned by the rich because they're the ones that influence government so much. So this public property that is now our land is actually technically even more the rich's land than the private land that we know we can't. It's so disturbing.
That's neoliberalism, and that's because people don't understand our operational reality. So they allow our government to privatize the public space. and they allow our government to starve the economy of public spending, and then that forces us into private debt just to consume production and survive. The fact of the matter is, Article 1, Section 8 means government never has to look for money. All federal spending is brand new dollars created by congressional decree. So that means we can, as a people, unite any day. If we unite in solidarity tomorrow, we can force our government to balance the economy tomorrow. Period. There's nothing in our way except for political will.
I agree. But that solution still doesn't account for the propensity of corruption, because when you have one currency, there's going to be centralized control. And when there's centralized control of any one thing, this generation may get it right. FDR's generation maybe got it right, or other times we've had successes, but it still doesn't solve the long-term problem. And you've heard of the I forgot the name of it, but there's a cycle that happens basically every 4 generations. It's every 80 to 100 years. And one generation goes to war, the next generation's hardworking, the next generation's spoiled, the next generation's complacent. And it's like every 40 years we go through this same cycle. And it's like, I'm sick of it. And I don't want to just continue band-aiding this shit up. And if you have a centralized authority, which is any centralized currency in one institution, there's going to be propensity for corruption, because there's always going to be some asshole who's going to want it, and they're going to be able to do like some Hannibal Lecter backdoor shit that the public is not going to know about. And if there's ever going to be a generation that sits back on their ass just a little bit and doesn't watch government just every bit, every second, every day, then it's going to get corrupt. And it's like that happens every time.
That's always the problem. That's why we have a democracy, a participatory democracy. We must participate. If we don't participate, it don't work. That's a fact.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Why don't people participate? Because they know it's shit. So it's like
because they believe the lies and the scare tactics. If they understood poverty is just a choice, imperialism is just a choice, then they wouldn't accept it. But let's go back a minute. I want to expand on the central bank.
Okay.
When you have a central authority in charge of money, you said we have a propensity for corruption. And I agree with that. There's always a propensity for corruption. But you're telling me you think if we take away that central authority and give it to states or local governments or individuals, that somehow that propensity for corruption is gone? What takes that propensity for corruption away?
So this was back to the part where I said you have to change people's focus. So right now we grow up and we have a whole generations worth of people that are saying, yes, our whole point of our lives is to get a job so we can make money and better ourselves in capitalism, or we're going to serve the public in government. And that to me is a massive mental prison, because now you're trying to solve the problem either in capitalism, which makes you a greedy asshole, or government, which kind of makes you almost have to lie just to even get power. And that's like, neither of those is necessarily a good state for human beings to be in. And so I don't know if you know, so I was running for Congress. I'm not anymore because the government, well, anyway, I don't want to talk about that. But my platform, I was running as a
So how do you achieve this transportation?
What's that?
How do you achieve this transformation?
Okay, yeah, so that's the part I was getting into. That's the big key. So I was pushing you about if. Here's my if. So full disclosure. So I was advocating on something I'm calling the cooperative economy, and that is effectively open source philosophy marries small business. And what I think people should do is turn to their communities and make them, like I said, sustainable and independent. And let's say, as an example, this will take about 2 minutes. As an example, you in your own little community start growing food, and you figure out a way through hydroponics or aquaponics, whatever the stuff is, a way to make your food sustainable and independent for just maybe your local cul-de-sac. And you share it on the internet. And then someone from Arizona picks it up, and they're like, oh, you know what, that was a good idea. I'm just going to buy all those parts. But those people in San Diego, they don't know how to save water. In Arizona, I know how to save water. So they take the same stuff that you did, but they repeat and they do some improvements, and they share back online, same yield of crop, except they use less water. And then my friends in Silicon Valley, these are my old geeky people, they're like, well, this is all great, but we want this crap automated. So they then take exactly what you did, they save the water, and then they learn how to automate most of it. And then the guy that originally started, without doing any extra work, but just the fact that he started to make his community sustainable and independent, now gets this new and improved model. And if you rinse and repeat this it has to be trending. Someone has to say, hey, this is a good idea, we need to do it, and then someone with more voice than me. But rinse and repeat this all across the nation or the world, because it's anyone on the internet, and every community who chooses now has access to best practice for growing food. And it's just by people participating. Yes, they have to have money. It won't cost that much to grow local.
I like it.
And then if you rinse and repeat this same process for, say, health, you can all of a sudden switch to being health maintenance instead of sick care. And you can do a lot of local neighborhood maintenance because someone knows chiropractor, someone can do blood, blah, 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 blah. And you make everything as local as you can. You share it with the world. It's best practice. And the focus now becomes making your community better.
Egalitarian.
Right. Well, it's not even egalitarian because your wealth becomes the wealth of your community. So if you make your community badass and everyone works, say, 20 hours a month, and you have food, health, you get your news, of course, and you probably have local transportation. Maybe you even have a local cryptocurrency that's based on the wealth.
Exactly.
But your personal wealth becomes the wealth of your community. And so you will want to make your community better. You don't even have to get paid, but initially you'll get paid because we live in a capitalist world. So what you have is you have capitalism here. This is where we are now, and cooperative economy doesn't exist. And slowly but surely, you just kind of, eventually have more dependence on the cooperative economy. And you eventually you're here and hippies say, you know what, I don't even need all my cell phones and stuff. And then as you get to, year 5 of the cooperative economy, when you have manufacturing, design, you have your own energy that's local, sustainable, and independent, you really don't need capitalism at all. And for me, that's the big switch. That's the decentralized approach that puts power directly into the hands of people. Because any other solution requires taking wealth from, like you said, from rich people who, in your experience, they don't really give it away too easily. You kind of.
I like everything you said until the very end.
Oh, okay, what did I say?
About we taking rich people's money. The fact is we never need the rich people's money. Congress makes all dollars by congressional decree. We destroy all taxes.
Wealth. I'm saying rich people don't give away their power. Like Saudi Arabia is not going to give away their foothold on oil.
No, we take it. It's up to capitalism only exists in the private sector only to the extent socially owned government allows. But wait, let's go back.
Yeah.
I like the egalitarian approach and your cooperative democracy, cooperative economy. I like that. That goes right. Okay, post a link. That goes right along with what we're talking about with the federal job guarantee. See, because most of these things ain't going to be able to get going without some type of funding, without some type of safety net. So with a federal job guarantee, you have federally funded, locally administered, decentralized community gardens. You can have labor for green. You can have, labor for education, all of these things. The federally guaranteed living wage job program is a democratic means of production through which we can increase just about any real resource we need for the general welfare. So the only thing I see with that is without knowledge of how our modern economy actually works, it's impossible. Because without, federal funding, if government doesn't spend dollars into the economy, economic output will dry up. Factories will close. Millions of people will die.
Yep.
So and now I love the part about wanting to transform people's minds. And this is what the federal job guarantee does. It shows people that government can make efficient and good direct jobs that are very socially valuable. And then once people understand that and they see, government is good for something and they can be trusted if we work them, then when there's problems that arise in private sector production, then the population will be much more likely to say, you know what, let's go ahead and seize the means of production, or at least the commanding heights,
I understand.
steel production and things like
Yeah.
that. So, that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
I actually see us on the same page here.
Yeah, there's a
Kind of.
lot there's a lot of that. And honestly, if you could get, Congress in, or, anyone in government to transfer wealth or print money or create money or basically give the community access money so that they can do what they want, great. No argument for me. I don't see it happening. I don't see I don't see a blue wave happening. I don't see a wave of people
Get a
running
blue
for
wave.
office without money happening. I mean, I want it. I want it. I was running. I was trying to make it happen. There's definitely people that I love that are running. I hope they win. I think a lot of them are. But it's like, to get the stuff that you're talking about, let's assume that I agree with that. I think there's propensity for corruption, but we don't need to repeat that. But to get that, I still feel like that's a few years away. Like to get that many good people in
Right
office.
right now we see people power doing exactly what I'm saying, and you have a right-wing neoliberal like Cory Booker, who is actually proposing the federal job guarantee right now because he felt the heat after he voted against lowering prescription drug prices.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
people really laid into him, and that's great.
He's an
You
establishment
know,
stooge.
yeah, but this is what we're supposed to do. It when labor unites, it don't matter who's in office. And I want to go back to something because it's
Yeah.
very important that you understand this basic fact about how government operates. Government, like I said, is mandated to mint and tax for the general welfare of society and the common defense thereof. That means government needs real resources like labor for the military, legal systems, infrastructure, things like that. The only way government could get these things and satisfy its mandate to the general welfare is by slavery or by operating a monetary economy, imposing a tax. Government imposes tax to make unemployment, and then it provisions society with real resources using paid employment. It's just a social construct.
Yeah.
So this is how it always been for over 2,000 years, as far as records go back.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's only for a short time did America even peg our infinite spending power to a finite amount of gold and being the gold standard.
Yeah, no,
That only
our
happened.
money history is quite fascinating. Like with Andrew Jackson, and I mean, he was kind of a freak, but it's like he was he was fighting the banks and whatnot, and
but
monetary policy itself is fascinating because you made reference to it earlier. It's like all the public debt, has to balance out with the private debt. So like that,
okay, it's
there's
accounting identity.
there's an interesting couple loops in there that to me aren't that relevant, but also make that equation extra fascinating. So I think monetary policy is very interesting.
Well, but see, this is just it. I don't understand. All problems in society have their roots in economics, and they have their macroeconomic solutions. No matter any problem you say, I could show you in the roots are in economics. So the biggest problem we face today in modern MMT, I always say, is the revolutionary vehicle that can unite all sides for the public purpose using simple logic and scientific fact. And you point to, Article 1, Section 8. This is the law. The Fed, in fact, can't make dollars,
Yeah.
only spending bills, and them are just instructions for the Federal Reserve and Treasury to spend dollars into existence. But more than that, if you don't understand how this federal finances work, then we end up getting good people who think we have to tax the rich before government can spend on society, who think we have to cut defense before government can spend on society, who think we have to end the Fed or replace government before government can do its job and save lives. So that's how they get us to accept pointless austerity that kills more than guns and drugs combined.
Yeah, and I
Government
think
never needs revenue.
Yeah, and you make a really good point because it's like, you have the argument of the debt and an argument of the tax the rich, and really creating money and spending it in a different group is the same thing as transferring access to wealth because it's a percentage. It's not like if you have $1 million, that matters what other people have in their account with that before that $1 million really can be valued. So, printing money or creating money, however you want to describe it, you're absolutely right. It's like you are pointing out the absurdity of what they're arguing against. Like, oh, you can't tax the rich. I'm like, yeah, you could just create money and give it to these people. It's the same effing thing.
You tax the rich, just not the fun spending. It needs to be separated. We tax the rich because they're too damn rich. That's why we tax the rich.
That's me.
Yeah.
I'm 1%.
And we tax the rich also to, to avoid, bad behaviors by a corporation, things like that.
Yeah.
Syntax.
Yeah.
But the thing is government never needs federal taxes to pay for spending. And I could prove that with simple logic.
Sure.
Can you start a game of Monopoly by collecting rent? It's impossible.
Right.
The banker always has to hand out money, issue the money first. Only then can you collect it back. It's the same with government. Federal spending funds taxpayers who then pay tax or buy bonds. It's never vice versa at the federal level. In fact, all taxes at the federal level are destroyed upon receipt. They're only used for accounting. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's it.
It's a fascinating game. Yeah, it's pretty disturbing. And like I said, my main disagreement with you is the expectation of what's going to happen with the rules that we set up. And I think you can make it work briefly, but for me, I'm trying to think of how can something work 7 generations down the road. And it's like seeing what people are doing to trample over rules now. I'm like, there's nothing we can do other than to free people's minds from the BS game that we're playing now that will truly free them down the road in the future.
Understand, though, fiat money gives us the greatest flexibility in policy options, okay? Because government has an infinite ability to spend. It has infinite dollars. The only thing that matters is we have enough real resources to buy with that money. So now to take that infinite dollar, that infinite spending power, and to say, tie it to gold, to give it some intrinsic value. People don't really get this, but that just limits our federal spending. Then our federal spending is no longer infinite. It can't go above the gold reserves, or else it devalues the dollar. And when you said about valuing the dollar, I want to make sure you understand this simple point here. $1 is always equal to 1 tax credit now. Okay, we don't exchange dollars for gold, or we don't exchange gold for dollars anymore, so the dollar has no intrinsic value. Mm-hmm. It cannot be devalued. All right, the dollar's value is constant. $1 is worth 1 tax credit, regardless of the federal revenues coming in, regardless of the exchange rate, regardless of the markets. The only way that personal value changes is if government loses its ability to tax. I say it's personal because we're able to use dollars to pay our tax, stay free, and keep our stuff. That value will not change unless government loses its ability to tax. So when people say that we have to be on the gold standard to make money real, they're not understanding. Even then, it was still fiat money. Government still set an arbitrary price that each dollar was worth so much amount of gold. Well, it set that price, it set the weights, it sets it all.
Yeah.
And fiat money has been with us from the beginning. It has longevity. And anytime we had an emergency, say World War II or a depression, we had to suspend the gold standard because that's the only way we can overcome the emergency. The World War II, we went from a Great Depression to the #1 world superpower in the world with deficit
building
spending.
Weapons.
And building weapons too, but investing in our society. We can have a war today on poverty, just like the war against Germany. Only we can invest in our society, invest in green, sustainable energy, healthcare. These are all things that affect our productive capacity. If you don't take care of the productive capacity, there is no society. Alan Greenspan in Congress told Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan was trying to say, we need to privatize Social Security to make it more secure. And Alan Greenspan, to his credit, he's a notorious neoliberal too.
Oh, I know.
But to his credit, he said the truth. He told Paul Ryan, No, we don't need to privatize it because it's never insecure. Government can always create as much money as it wants and pay it to somebody. And
As
the only
long
thing that matters
as long as
is
people are willing to buy
in the
the debt.
context. Well, no, there will always be people willing to buy debt because they get free interest. So when I know, hey, I got
Do
dollars
you
in
know
my
who buys
hand,
most of our debt now?
we do, our
Who?
government,
What?
our government,
No,
the
no.
Treasury,
Private
the Treasury
institutions buy our
and the
debt.
Fed buy. Well,
Remember?
no, most of our debt is owned by our government. That's a fact. Then now China and some private institutions do too. But the fact of the matter is, if you have dollars in your hand, are are, are you going to, if you're offered a bond that pays interest, are you going to want to keep the dollars that don't pay interest, or are you going to want to put those dollars in a savings bond that do pay interest? All right, and you get free money.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an overly simplified equation considering.
Well, no, it's a fact. If you
Yeah,
put
but
your money in a bond, you're going to get the interest.
of
So
course.
and the other thing is government guarantees demand for its dollars by imposing tax and being the monopoly issuer. So everybody that owns property in America, they have to pay tax. Okay, so merchants all over, it's universally accepted the dollar because they know the dollar will always be in demand to pay taxes, fees, and fines. Okay, and so they use it as a general means of exchange.
The dollar
This
will
is
not
fact.
always be in demand.
Unless America falls and loses its ability to tax, it will always be in demand. Because if you don't pay your tax, you lose your house and go to jail.
Oh,
So
I
you
agree.
will
I
always
agree.
need dollars.
But internationally,
That
what
means
gives
it
the
will
dollar
always be in
value?
demand. Internationally, it's a few things: our geopolitical dominance, and basically we have the international reserve currency status
Right.
because people want to do business with us.
Right. So
All right, they want to.
So what can you buy with dollars internationally, big picture wise?
Anything, because everything is priced in dollars. It's universally accepted.
Right.
We have the international reserve currency. We get
But
gold and oil for
but
dollars.
think bigger, not internal small objects. Like if China has $1 trillion, what are they going to buy?
They're going to invest some of it in our economy because that's the only thing they could do, or they're going to buy savings bonds. That's the only two things they could do short of putting it on the exchange rate
And
and
oil.
losing an arm and a leg.
And oil.
Well, they're not going to buy oil because we don't sell them oil. If they're buying oil, they're going to buy it from, another nation.
We force countries to sell oil in dollars.
Yes, yeah, we have the international reserve currency status.
No.
We don't force them, though. We don't force China to sell us their stuff.
We can't force China, but we tried to force Libya. We tried to force Iraq.
Absolutely, and that was a choice. That was a choice, not an operational necessity. We never need profit. And if we wanted to, we can invest in our own productive capacity. We could use hemp.
We could.
Everything oil can.
We
do.
could.
We could be investing in our green sustainable energy.
We could.
Right now.
But we don't. Why?
Because the ruling class has the public believing right-wing neoliberal lies about money. That's the fact. Right now, people think that a petrodollar runs America. People think that if we lost the international reserve currency, somehow we're going to be hurting. Japan doesn't have the international reserve currency. Japan doesn't have the petrodollar. Japan doesn't have a military dominating the world.
Right.
Yet they still deficit spend at over 250% of GDP. And they've been doing it for the last 20 years.
Yeah,
they have a stronger safety net. They have higher employment, lower poverty. They don't even have our productive capacity. They use dollars to stabilize their own currency. If they could do it, we could do it.
Japan has a little bit of different social dynamic. I mean, they have a giant retiring class, and anyway, it's a different country. The point I was trying to get at is that the dollar internationally, big picture wise, if you have $1 trillion, you need something for it, and you can only buy so many American businesses. And if America is not net exporting a lot of crap as China is now, then the dollars are going to go somewhere. And if you don't have a product, then there's a problem there. And right now, dollars, the people, it seems like the host government of the people who create dollars really want us to sell, how other countries sell oil in dollars. And that's a big thing because that creates demand for their product, the dollar. And
Okay. No,
that
the
is the whole
demand for their product.
corruption part that I'm talking about.
Government has a monopoly on the dollar. The demand is created by taxation on internally. Okay, geopolitical dominance determines our international reserve currency. But what you're not understanding about this, our net importer status and our trade deficit, is we get the finite, real resources of the whole world for our infinite dollars. And people think that's a bad deal for us. No, that's a great deal for us. We don't need to fight for starvation wage factory jobs making widgets. Let China do that work. Our jobs are then free to focus on society, raising everybody's standard of living with green sustainable energy, with single payer, with education. This is how we increase our standard of living. Our trade deficit allows us, you know what inflation is, right? When demand outstrips supply, you get inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could increase our supply of finite real resources with our infinite dollars from the world, then that's why we haven't had inflation problems for many, many years. Okay, because even after trillions of dollars in endless wars, trillions of dollars in corporate welfare and bank bailouts, we still haven't been able to hit our inflation target rate for many, many years. And this is exactly why. Because number one, we have untapped productive capacity. We have unemployment. So we can increase our supply with a federal job guarantee. Number two, we increase our supply with our trade deficit. So these are both ways of controlling inflation. Then after we get to our maximum productive capacity, we simply tax extra demand, or we sell bonds to extract extra demand. This is the real function of taxing and selling bonds. It's never to fund government. It's to extract demand and control inflation. Because again, we don't use bond revenues to spend. We don't use taxes to spend. They're destroyed upon receipt at the federal level.
But everything that you're going through has to go through this bullshit of democracy where our representatives are incentivized to be so disconnected, and that's normalized, and the only thing we have to say is just, well, let's just get more people involved, and we just have to change their mind over here, and it just completely ignores the reality that this is how human beings will operate in this system every time, because this is how human beings are.
This is what you're saying too. There's always something to do, and we are facing an uphill battle. But the fact of the matter is, the majority rules, and if the majority stops believing these right-wing neoliberal narratives,
the majority does not want war.
If the majority stays home from work, there's no war that can happen. That's the point. So the majority always rules,
and there is war.
No, if the majority stays home from work tomorrow. Everyone, no one goes to the military, no one goes anywhere. Okay,
that's
the majority.
That's never going to happen.
But
why even bring that up?
But that's the majority.
It's like because if the majority would just start fucking more, then we would be happier. Again, but they're not going to do it.
During the Great Depression, this is exactly what happened. Labor rose up. They occupied the factories.
Right.
They didn't let nobody work.
Right.
The ruling class didn't want to give us.
Did they solve the problem long term?
They solved it for 30 years.
Bullshit where it's top down.
They solved it for 30 years. The majority of federal spending went to the bottom.
Yeah, and they had a couple wars, and they had. It's like they're not solving the problem.
But this is the problem. We got complacent because we had it so good, and so then we started buying this neoliberal propaganda.
I know we've done this every time in history. This is the first time we've been here.
And since the 70s, though, this is the first time we're in the end stage of capitalism, the neoliberal period. Since the 70s, both parties have teamed up to kill the full employment policies of the New Deal. Ever since, both parties have targeted intentional poverty. They have targeted unemployment. And nobody says nothing about this. I went to college in I took a macroeconomics class. My teacher taught me 5% unemployment is really full employment. That's millions of people unemployed. How is that full employment? But we go along with it because we believe the right-wing lies about money.
It's not right-wing. It's all of them.
It is.
It's corporate. It's corporate greed.
Capitalism, neoliberalism, it's an authoritarian economic system that is right-wing. Left-wing
I guess that's just a label. To me, it's The Democrats are no better. Someone said,
Democrats
what
are
is my
right wing.
solution? I posted a link up above. Look for it. It's humanitarises.info.
Democrats are right wing.
Okay.
They're just a little bit better. They're
Fair
just a
enough.
little bit better
Fair enough.
than the Republicans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll
So
go with
we
that.
might have been confused on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Well, when
right
you
wing
said right,
too.
we see here for me, I'm a former Bernie guy, but now I don't. I mean, I call myself a progressive libertarian, if anything. But it's like I kind of have to defend my conservative friends and then my progressive friends because it's like I kind of see both sides. So when I heard right wing, I hear it's like we're always blaming conservatives. So I was like, well, some of them are actually, a lot of them are very good people. It's just not the ones in Congress so much, in my opinion.
Okay, so
Okay.
let's keep this going. Do you think
Yeah.
we should all have single payer health care?
Fuck no.
You don't. Okay,
No, well,
why not?
here's the thing. See, I don't trust government to do shit because I've seen how Democratic clubs, not even, why do I keep holding this thing? Democratic clubs, not even political ones, but just clubs in general operate with the concept of democracy and having, I forgot what the rules are in it, but there's a democracy and then you have someone that sets the agenda.
You
and
don't
it's
like the government
that
bureaucracy.
concept right there fails to get the will of the people reflected, because if you have an issue that you want to bring up, you now have to generate interest, or you have to have attention of the person leading the group, or they have to be on your side. So what this whole democracy does is that encourages those who are aggressive and those who have power to stay in power, but it gives the people at the bottom the illusion that they have control because you can vote. Right? And that's done at the local level with the clubs, and then rinse and repeat all the way up until Congress and the UN. It's the same crap. No one has to answer any questions. You just get up and bloviate, and whoever's running the show can force a vote or force not a vote. And that is no way to get people represented. And all of that comes about when you have the solution where there's someone up above that's going to make a decision on your behalf, and that's going to disseminate down, because now there's going to be propensity for corruption. And I'm not saying that we can't have that solution anywhere. I'm saying when you are going to define solutions, that you have to accept the pros and cons of all these things. And there is a massive con with democracy as implemented. And there is a massive con with top-down institutions running the show when you live in a society filled with as much greed that capitalism generates. And now we're running up into a hard wall where technology, automation, and AI are stealing what's left of the jobs, and then people are going to continue fighting and trying to save the very system that drove them off the cliff without even acknowledging the pitfalls and shortcomings of the system that led them there in the first place. And to me, that's just insanity.
I hear you. What you're saying is basically you're against government bureaucracy. That's a reasonable thing. I get that.
I'm saying we should accept the shortcomings of it, and no one seems to, because that's our only solution right now. That's what people think.
What you're not understanding is if you don't want the government to do it, then you want a for-profit corporation to do it.
That's the mental prison they got you in.
There's no two ways about it.
No.
There's no two ways about it.
No.
Even that, the private sector can't do it.
I agree.
Only the government.
I agree.
Only the government.
No, they both suck. They both suck.
But no, wait a minute. Only the government can provide for the general welfare of society.
Disagree.
Only the government has infinite money. The government is the supreme authority in society. If government tells you owe them, if government puts a tax on you, you can't say no. You have to pay the tax.
I know,
or
it's
you go
full on
to jail
slavery.
or lose.
It's
government is the supreme authority. This is how government, it's a social contract that we all agree. If you don't agree with our Constitution, you're free to leave. But
no,
this
I'm not.
is our Constitution.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
I have to get a passport with a microchip, and they may not even let me out of this country.
You can walk across the border.
No, the fuck I can't.
Sneak across. Nobody's keeping you here. If you want to leave, you can leave. The fact is, if you want to stay, you have to abide by our societal rules. And in the Constitution, that lays out that that's the government. They are the supreme authority. And so
that's the problem.
Wait a minute. To say I don't want to save lives today, I don't want to give everybody free health care because what if government takes it away tomorrow? Well, then we'll deal with that tomorrow.
That's not what I said at all.
Well, you said you don't want single payer because you don't trust government.
Yes.
I say if you I don't trust government either. We have
Yes,
to
you
keep
do.
government honest. No, I trust people.
Me
If
too.
we want something, we can make it happen. Again,
Yeah.
we force the ruling class to give us the full employment
Why?
policies.
They're
We
not going to
force
listen.
the
They're going to
ruling
fight
class.
us. You know, forcing
We
the
already
ruling
did it.
class. Check
We
this out.
already did it many,
Forcing
many
the ruling
times.
class, either if they're a capitalist system or in the government or what, a private or public, forcing the ruling class is just like going to someone who hates you and saying, you know what, I want you to write me a letter of recommendation. And then they come back and you're like, oh, wow, well, yeah, maybe you want to write legibly. And they're like, oh, okay, and then
Cory
you give it
Booker
back
is
to them. And it
proposing.
comes back and you're like, oh, shit, man, maybe don't write across the line. You
Cory
know, and it
Booker
just
is
keeps going back.
pushing the federal job guarantee.
It's like,
That's forcing government. Okay, Bernie Sanders
why
is
fight it?
proposing our progressive agenda.
Why
Because
bang your head against the wall?
I don't accept pointless suffering and death.
Yes, you do. You're advocating the government help people.
I advocate my government help people, not
That's
let people die
pointless.
pointlessly on this. Helping people is pointless.
No, the
but
government is pointless.
No, government is the supreme authority. Government can save lives today. If government spends money,
they got you enslaved.
No, they got you enslaved. If you think
wait,
that
no,
free,
hold on,
if government doesn't help me,
hold on. Who is your supreme authority?
If government doesn't, the government is your supreme authority.
No, who is your supreme authority?
The government is all of our supreme authority.
Not mine.
Yes, it is.
Not mine.
If government tells you to do something, you will do it, or you will go to jail.
You have a mental prison,
you
sir,
will lose
that you are
your
so insistent that the government has to be the supreme authority over human beings.
It is. So you're telling me that you'll tell the government no? If they tell you to go 55 miles an hour, you'll go 100, and you
have to make your own mind up in every situation.
And you have to deal with the consequences of our supreme authority. That's the fact.
Matt's going, how do you get your solution from here? So we did talk about it earlier. I don't know if we want to repeat it. It's the cooperative economy, basically, Matt, localizing and making communities sustainable and independent through open source and sharing. But if you don't want a solution, then I can't really help you more from that.
He's asking that because it's when you're telling me the solutions require ifs, and all solutions require an if. You know, and all solutions at this stage in the game will require the majority support and majority demanding.
No.
All solutions.
No.
Okay. You can't have what solution ain't gonna demand the majority?
Cooperative economy, the one I suggested.
The cooperative economy needs the majority of each town to support an idea.
If you can get by with 15% easily. And then once 15% got it started, it would be all downhill from there.
If a majority of my town says we don't want gardens, then guess what? I don't care if you want a garden or not. You're not allowed to have a garden.
You're going to tell your neighbor what to grow?
That's homeowner associations. This happens. You have contracts.
Yeah. Do you think that's good? Do you think that top-down authority is good?
That's not. I just said the majority. That's bottom up.
You said you need a majority to do anything, and I said no.
Yeah, that's bottom up. That's bottom up. Majority rules. Now, top down would be a corporation or something like that rules. The 1%. That's not what I'm talking about. But what you're saying is it's wrong for government to save lives. If government gave me money right now and I was able to get health care, that would be wrong. I would be freer if I let government starve me of money and died of a pointless illness.
Okay.
That doesn't even make sense.
Let me clarify the single payer in that part to you then.
Okay.
So
sure.
Let's just say I was still running for Congress, because there's an interview out and someone asked me this very question. I think single payer is better than what we have now. And if I were in Congress, I would sign it because it's a no-brainer to sign something that's better than what you have. And I think public option's better than that. I think Medicare for all, potato. It's getting people access to health care cheaper, and that's better. So I would sign that. I think it's a bad idea in general because once people take a half step forward, in this society, they tend to rest. And they're like, well, we got it. And I think that's bad because it's a Band-Aid and not a fix. I'm about fixing problems and not just patching this bullshit. And Obama got elected and we're like, oh, progressives, we can just all sit back. And we just spent the last 8 years at war. And I think that if we are going to apply any Band-Aid solution, that we need to say we're going to do Band-Aid and continue talking about the real fix. And I don't see any financial incentive or any political incentive ever to do anything remotely like that.
Single payer is a Band-Aid, like your community, your plan for cooperation is a Band-Aid.
No, that's a fix.
Any program that helps people will get complacent. Okay, that's a fact of life.
No.
It doesn't matter what you do.
Disagree.
When people have it good,
disagree.
People start to get complacent.
Disagree.
To say we can't have we can't have single payer health care because tomorrow we're going to get complacent and give it up is illogical. We need to fight and make government do what we can today, and then we need to worry about tomorrow. We need to always fight.
Or we can have a fix such that it says, oh, if we follow these guidelines, we're going to take what we can normally know that human beings can be incentivized to do, and we're like, oh, we won't be incentivized to sit back on our ass because then our community won't work.
So you want a whole new set of rules. And you don't need anyone to
force you to do it, and you don't need some top-down authority.
So you want a whole new set of rules, a whole new government, a whole new constitution before government could spend money and save lives. That's what you're saying.
No. What I'm saying is that people should voluntarily begin to cooperate with this thing that I'm calling the cooperative economy. What the rules are, it's basically open source philosophy marries small local community project. People voluntarily do that, and that will create a system that competes with capitalism and government. So you have a cooperative economy here, and eventually your dependence will wade off of that, and government can fuck off or it cannot fuck off. If we need government we'll keep
will still be the supreme authority. Government needs resources. When government needs your food to pay their employees, they will tax you, and you will give up that food.
Government employees.
Or you will give up your money. You want to sell your goods.
No, government employees will quit the government and start to work on their own local communities.
Listen, we have a military. We have infrastructure. Yeah. We have sanitation, legal systems. This ain't going to happen with community gardens. All right. If government doesn't spend, then economic output will dry up. Factories will close. People will die. If we don't have a government and military, rogue nations will take us over. Another capitalist class. It will always be something. You can never get rid of private forces. You know, I don't care. You can never have utopia. We could work toward it. We could work toward it. I agree. Perfect. We should work toward it.
So I don't think, work toward it. I'm not saying that you have to believe me when I say we're not going to need government and capitalism in the future. You don't have to believe me. All you have to accept is that if you want to empower a community, they should be sustainable and independent from capitalism and government for their food.
That's what I preach.
And health.
No one's independent of government, though. If government
should be
today, but they shouldn't be, because we need military, we need police, we need sanitation.
Right.
Can you imagine if there was no government? We would still be living in huts out in the woods in two-person society.
Hardly.
We have a civil society, modern day society. This takes massive central planning, which is how government spends to organize and distribute the real resources of our nation for the general welfare of society. Now, that's fine. If you think that we should do community gardening thing, that's fine. But if you want to run for Congress, you got to be able to fulfill the government's mandate to the general welfare. And that means balancing the economy and society so every single person can derive good benefit. That's the general welfare. Government is not supposed to spend and work for the private purpose of the 1%.
No.
So to say, yeah, we need community gardens, that's fine, but you still got to deal with government's duties today. We can help them community gardens with a federal job guarantee, federally funded, locally administered.
I just don't think you're not.
Think about this. If the government would give your community, or if they went in your community, there is already nonprofits and volunteer agencies that already know your community inside out. The only thing they are lacking is cash and resources. If our federal government was to give them money, they would be able to utilize that money in very efficient ways to help people right now.
Oh, I
And
agree.
the fact,
I agree.
and but you don't agree they should.
Oh, I
You
don't
don't
think
agree
you can get
government
them.
should
So I
because you
think it's a
think
waste of time. I mean, aliens could
well,
come down and give us some great
so how did,
technology. I just
well,
don't think it's going to happen.
I already told you, we got the ruling class to give up slavery. We got them to give up the full employment policies of the New Deal. We
I
got them to
think
get us the EPA. We
you
got them to get out of the Vietnam War. We have forced the ruling class to do this before. So all I'm saying is we can do it again. If we can force the ruling class to give us the full employment policies of the New Deal today, and we could balance the economy, we would no longer be the precarious class. People at the bottom would have living wage work. And then that would make the minimum wage the federal living wage without even a mandate to the private sector.
I
Either the
understand that.
private sector beat that or they can't attract the labor workforce.
I
This
understand
is
that.
less authoritarian than what we even have right now. And I want to get back to the point where you're against government bureaucracy, but you think somehow that it would be better in the private sector. When
No.
in reality, it's the government that isn't constrained. The private sector needs profit. They work for profit. Okay, that's a fact.
Oh,
The
yeah.
government never needs profit, so it could work just for the needs of its citizens if we force it to.
The needs of its
And that's the
politicians.
fact.
I got to
That's how
take
we allow it.
I got to take a leak. So
Okay.
I need
Well,
30
that's how
seconds.
we allow it. I'd love to pick this back up. Oh, you want to do? Okay. Well, go ahead.
Or if you want to end it here and we could talk again, I'm down for that.
Well, let's ask. Go ahead, take a leak. I'll wait. I'll try to get some more
Right.
questions to ask you. Anybody got some good questions that they want to ask him, or some good points that I may have missed that you feel may be better? What happens to the old, the sick? Yeah, they all die. That's the problem with this kind of thinking. He's not understanding that the government is the supreme authority, and without government spending, people will die. The vulnerable, the sick, the old, the young, and yeah. So it's government's job to maintain the general welfare. And it's why some of what he says makes sense, but most of it doesn't. And I try to show him, but actually I have no hopes that this guy will get it. It's about you. It's about other people that are watching that see how ludicrous these arguments are. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Government bureaucracy is bad, but it's not worse than corporate bureaucracy. Believe me, you always want a democratic body that's answerable to the democratic process, or to massive scale civil disobedience at the worst come to worst. Corporate profits, a board comprised of 12 people looking for profits for their shareholders are going to be very much less responsive to the will of the people than a democratic elected government. It's just that simple. Yeah, he's saying that he's saying that we need. It's always an if, and then everything is an if, and there's nothing that's going to take away the struggle. There will always be a struggle between the public and private forces. That never goes away. Yeah, where will his community? Yeah, where will his community get the money for the community garden? Yeah, that's a great question. That's what I was trying to hit on. Rob Rivera.
Yeah, I saw that question go by a few times.
He wants to know where to get the money for communities to get the initial tools, the seeds, this, that, the other thing. Because if government isn't spending money, there's no dollars available.
Yep.
So you're not going to be able to go to the store and get tools. You're not going to be able to get seeds.
Yep.
You're not going to be able to get this stuff. And if you don't got a job that can supply all your needs, then you're not going to be able to have a community garden and put time into it, because you're going to be trying to survive by the skin of your teeth.
Yeah.
This is why it all goes back to government every time. What's your answer?
Yeah. And there's not going to be any one silver bullet, like, here's a way to get the community money, because that's always the problem. There are ways to get money, and you have to scrap, or you can fight the government.
They come from government.
There's always
There's
problems.
no way to get money besides government.
There's GoFundMe and all that
Government,
crap. Anyway, but
but
what
but
I
but
would
that money comes from government first, always. Government's the
okay,
currency
sure,
issuer.
sure,
That's a
from
fact.
that aspect. So, but if there's like the way I don't know how this gets started. I've never tried to change the world before, but I suspect there's going to be some groups of early adopters that will try it, and those groups will have money. The groups that I would suspect would try it, there are probably going to be some people from the 60s who still want to try and get something back that they were unsuccessful. Maybe they will donate. There are going to be students who don't have jobs and who are looking to change the world. And all of a sudden, if you can give them an idea and they'll all just go for it, they will do that. And they'll do a GoFundMe or whatever. And that could start raising money if it generates a lot of interest. I don't know, Snapchat and shit goes really quickly.
But you
And
see
I
the
think
shortcomings.
there are pockets that would start it. And unlike capitalism, where the goal is scarcity because that's profitable.
But you're still talking about a capitalist system. It don't matter if you have a community garden.
No.
The private sector don't leave.
No. Definitely
What do
not.
you mean?
Definitely not.
What are you talking about?
Definitely
Do you think
not.
if we have community gardens that somehow the private sector is going to vacate the economy?
No, the
you
private
think
sector
capitalists are somehow going to leave?
No, I'm talking about adding a third option. We have government, capitalism, and I'm going to say a third option.
But capitalism is our economy. It's our economy.
Yeah,
there is no third option. We can be more egalitarian, but it'll still be in a capitalist system until we change that. And the only way you change that is through making the government respond to the needs of the people.
No, because I think the government and capitalism are two sides of the same problem.
Capitalism is in the private sector. The government is the currency issuer. Capitalism only exists at the behest of government.
And
government tells the capitalists what they can do, what they can't do, who they can, everything. The capitalism can't exist if the government isn't there to enforce their rights. That's just the point. You can't even own property. You can't have any rights without government protecting your rights from the majority. Because if you have property that would help 100 people stay alive naturally, okay, and there's no government there, okay, you're going to get the majority of people that come through and take your shit by force. And there's nothing you could do to stop it. Unless you got a nuclear weapon and you're just going to kill yourself. But I mean, when the majority comes for them real resources without the state behind you, backing up your rights, there is no private property. There is no rights whatsoever. The state is the supreme authority.
And that's the problem.
That? So how would it be better by not having rights? How would it be better to give people no rights and then the majority can just go and take your stuff? The majority could just go string you up if they want. How would that be better?
Why would that happen?
Because people are racist, people are hateful, people are greedy. This is why that happens. Today, that happens already.
That happens when human beings are bred in an environment where they're taught greed is the only way to be. That's what human beings respond to.
And this is how we were raised. We're raised to put profit over everything.
Right.
So I agree that's bad, but that is the reality.
So why do we want to continue that bullshit system?
We don't. I don't want to continue.
Yes,
that's
you do.
why
You're like government's the supreme authority.
Yeah, that's not capitalism. Capitalism takes orders from government. That's the fact. The government is the lever of power.
Money influences our government?
Sure it
government
does.
Is money,
because we allow it to. But because we allow it to. If the majority rose up tomorrow and stayed home, wait a minute. If the majority rises up tomorrow, no, the voting's rigged. But if the majority rises up,
of course it is.
If the majority rises up, we still socially own our government. If the majority rises up tomorrow, we don't go to work. I don't care how much money they got. The ruling class has no leverage. They have no society without us working. They must meet our demands. That's why we got the New Deal after the Great Depression. That's why we got the EPA.
We cannot feed ourselves. So we have to meet their demands. Otherwise, our families don't eat.
No, if everybody does it, then there's
Where do they get the food without money?
And I could take that, and I say the same thing. I'm not talking about staying home from work for weeks. One day.
Oh, well, then they don't give a fuck. Take a day off.
No, they do. Listen to me, if the majority stays home from work for one day, we could watch America grind to a halt. And then the next day go back to work, having demonstrated our ability to organize and shut shit down. Then we can leverage that ability to get our demands met. And by the way, this is actually what's happened all through history. This isn't some pie in the sky idea. Every single working class gain we got has been got through collective power.
Oh yeah, and they get a little bit and they push back, and it just goes on and on throughout history, and the people stay down.
Change. That will never change. Even if we had a society like that, they tried to have in the USSR or China, where they tried to have a socialist society. You always will still have private forces that try to take power for their personal interest at the society's expense. That doesn't go away.
Yes, it does.
You have to show me where, because nothing in human behavior, we've never seen anything. And from the world of record began, we have never seen humans not exhibit greed, not exhibit callous indifference to other human suffering. We have not seen humans, never.
Native Americans? History,
even the Native Americans warred with each other. They killed each other all the time.
They
natural resources.
They weren't like insane greedy. They
I'm
didn't
sure
have
some of them
pedophiles
were
running the government shit.
You don't think some of them looked and saw, coveted thy neighbor's wife? Really?
I think they had a little more free love.
We're all humans. We're all humans. We all have the same innate desires.
I don't think they had man and wife.
You know what I mean. You know what Maslow's hierarchy of needs is? Mm-hmm. It's a psychological term. Okay, this is basically what drives our human behavior. All right, and it works up into a paragraph. It goes up. When these needs aren't met, okay, things get crazy. Civility goes out the window. That's a fact. So what I say is we need to meet our base needs.
I agree.
Government can easily do that.
I just don't want to do it through government or capitalism.
Well, so then you want to let people die until we get enough community gardens to feed everybody.
The fuck you don't want government to die?
Because you just said you don't want government to save lives.
No, I said I don't want government and capitalism to solve the solution.
That's what I just said. So you don't want government to save lives because it would be solving a solution.
No, I don't think government or capitalism can solve the solution. That's why I don't want them to do it. Okay, I need diabetic medicine. I don't have money to get diabetic medicine.
Okay. If government gives me money, they will solve that problem. You're telling me that that's a bad idea.
That's a Band-Aid.
That's a permanent need. I will need
Getting you the insulin right there is a Band-Aid. The solution is that your community has insulin available for everyone like you as long as you voluntarily participate in it.
What scientists are going to be able to develop insulin in a lab working for nothing? That doesn't happen. Only dollars create that labor.
Because that's the system we live in.
And to date, it's the best system. Money is the best way we have to organize. And it's the only system to organize the real resources of a whole nation.
Wealthy friends chilling their high-tech community gardens.
For 300 million people.
I gotta say, it's so funny.
If you think we could take care of
me and they have no idea who I am. That's so fascinating.
But if you think we can take care of 300 million people with community gardens and individual picking ourselves up by our bootstraps, you're sorely mistaken.
I didn't say that.
There's people out there that can't do nothing. There's people out there that are sick, miserable. They need government. Well, you're saying government can't solve anything.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, government is the only person that could solve anything.
Scary.
The government could spend dollars into the economy today and save lives. Government could fully fund all police departments and stop police departments from policing.
Okay, stop. We've heard this rant. Stop. We've heard this rant.
No, that's a new one. I agree. That's a new one, though.
I agree. If you can get the government to do it, that would be great.
And I'll tell you how. And not even the federal government. You could do this at the local level without the federal government.
Okay,
The
so
local,
if you guys can do that, great. I have never seen any movement that has long-term control of a top-down institution like a government and have it last, not in a greedy
there's
capitalist
never
system.
been long-term control
If
of
you
anything.
can do it, great.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you how we do it. Because there's never been long-term control
Voting?
of anything. There's always push and take. All right, but we had 30 years of a balanced system when labor forced government to give us the full employment.
Good 30 years, almost a generation.
But hey, that's in that time the economy was balanced. People who were happy, they lived good, and we could do that again.
Yeah,
but even at the
I'm sure
local
black
level,
people were thrilled. I'm sure women were thrilled.
Minus racism and stuff like that, we can do the same thing. But the economy was balanced. The majority of federal spending went to the bottom 90%. That's a fact. You know, it's in the data. But anyway, at the local level, there's things you could do too. Okay, we could have state-owned banks, you know, locally owned banks that invest in
many top-down ownerships.
Okay, so they use tax revenues anyway. So instead of using Wall Street to finance community projects as done right now, we can have our own people own a bank, okay, and that bank invest into its own community. And then we can have, say, investing into solar energy or wind turbines, okay. Now that community can issue local complementary currency, local tax credits. Yeah. They can issue these tax credits to, say, their municipal employees, 90% dollars, 10% tax credits. That expands a local community's purchasing power without begging from the federal government, without raising taxes. And then another thing they could do is think about a situation where they go out and hire homeless people exclusively with these tax credits. Okay? These people could then turn around and use these tax credits to buy food at local participating businesses. They will want the tax credits because they could use them to pay their tax or to pay their utility bills. And again, if we're creating energy for free with wind turbines and solar panels, then this is a way to jumpstart local economies, to give people extra purchasing power without raising taxes, without making cuts. So there's tons of ways to do things at the local level and the federal level. But to sit here and cut off one of your biggest tools, which is the government, from the get-go is foolhardy.
I didn't say cut off the government.
Well, you did. You said you don't want the government to solve problems.
Yeah, but I didn't say cut it off.
You said, well, that is cutting it off. If the government can't solve a problem, nobody else can.
No, just let the government do whatever the fuck it's going to do, and let's focus on making our communities better. That's it.
Dude, are you seriously going to go to Congress and with the attitude of let the government do whatever it wants to do?
No, I'm not going to Congress.
The communities,
no, I'm not going. I'm telling human being to human being, if you trust the government, you're going to be disappointed. And if you trust capitalism, you're going to be disappointed because neither of them have your interest in mind. Both of them are perfectly okay bombing brown people with impunity for oil. You think they give two fucks about feeding your family? Are you shitting me?
Yes. If they know they can't get away with it, they will.
But they can. Again. They do. Can't. They have forever.
Only because people don't know the reality. They think that there's a finite. When people think our government is broke and impotent, they will not rise up because there's nothing they could do. Okay, there's nothing they could do because they only have so much money. When people think that there's a finite amount of money, they're not going to want to help people at the bottom because they think to do so means they get less of the pie. These are the right-wing lies that maintain their illusion of power. So once we break through that with operational truth, we see unemployment, poverty, imperialism. Anywhere profit is put over to general welfare is not necessary. It's just a political choice.
What are we going to work for? What are we going to do?
That's what I just said. A federal
take all the jobs. So now we're just going to live off central bank and UBI.
This is another ruling class narrative that they use to keep power. The fact of the matter is automation is a small percentage of private sector production. Okay,
Long
and with a
term.
federal,
No, think long term. Like
I well,
think
wait a
long
minute,
term.
wait a minute. Back in FDR's day, he proposed a federal job guarantee and said within 15 years, 90% of our jobs will be taken by automation. 100 years ago, 99% of our society was needed to produce all our agricultural needs.
Yeah.
Mechanization came and they said, oh my God, we're not going to have no more jobs. Blah, blah. The fact of the matter is our jobs will adapt. They always do. When hopefully robots come tomorrow and they could do all the precarious work.
Yeah.
Our jobs are then free to focus on society, raising everybody's standard of living, because we don't want robots to deliver babies. We don't want robots to teach our kids. We don't want robots to keep people company at the elderly home. You know, these are things that only humans can do the right way. And so, and either way, besides that, with a federal job guarantee in place, when capital moves to more automation, the federal job guarantee will absorb that displaced labor automatically and will repurpose it for the public purpose, raising all of our standard of living with a federal job guarantee. All this is possible if we, the people, demand it. Tomorrow, if we demand it, tomorrow we could save lives, period. It's that simple. Nothing can stop us except for political will. And political will mold to our will if we make it. It has to.
Actually, it doesn't. Governments control people more than they realize.
Listen, again,
and if you have a centralized currency that is in a closed system and your future labor and your current wealth is in their hands, I'm sorry, you're not free. And if you think a government is your ultimate authority, you are not free. And if your community cannot feed itself and you have to wait for FEMA because there's an earthquake or an oil shock or something stupid, you're not free.
I get it. We're not free. Nobody's free when they live in a government. They have to abide by societal rules and laws.
So shouldn't we try and change that?
No, you don't want rules and laws. You want people to go around killing each other, taking each other's stuff.
No. I'm just talking about getting people independent on their food and news. Don't jump all the way to the future.
And so am I, and that's what I'm talking. Well, then we're on the same page. I want a federal job guarantee to get people independent, so we can have.
I want people thinking of solutions.
We can have sustainable green energy.
I want people thinking of solutions outside the government, because petitioning the government for change is like banging your head against the wall. They don't want to change.
This is how all working class gain is got. This is how we got the modern society we have. This is how we went from a Great Depression
and we're still
to the number one world superpower.
And we're still not free.
If you think to be free is not to have rules and laws, then no, we'll never be free. I wouldn't want to be free.
Well, okay. Again, you keep jumping. You keep jumping all the way to some end that you're uncomfortable with. And I want to just say, can we at least be free on food and health from the government and capitalism?
If you think that means no rules on food and health, then no.
No, no. Everything is done by social pressure. So if you operate out in public view and they see your processes, you're not going to torture your animals because you yourself are going to consume them. You wouldn't want to torture your animals because you want to make fresh, efficient food.
What are we talking about? You really think that your local community can make vaccines, can make medicine?
Again, stop jumping. Just do food. What's wrong with you?
Look, okay, well, just food. Okay, we just have community gardens. Okay, what exactly do you think this is going to solve? People have food right now. If I have my own garden and the next door neighbor is disabled and can't work, why am I going to take care of them? That doesn't even make sense.
Because when communities start cooperating and they get used to the idea and the concept and how you can serve your community and make your life better with less labor than required before.
So community would be the government then. It's a new government.
No, there's no government.
Yeah,
mental prison. You're stuck.
You're describing
a collective. You don't need a higher authority, bud.
That the higher authority is us. If another person needs my goods and services, it's going to require me to do what's right, okay? Regardless, or the next person in the community. So regardless, it always is dependent on human behavior, of everybody. Okay? And what I'm talking about is making our government satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare. No more, no
I know.
less.
You keep repeating
Okay?
that. And you keep
And that's the
repeating that
only
you're in
thing that
this
matters because
mental prison where
you can't
government
do
has to
that
solve our
for us.
problems.
Because you can't do that. And neither can your community or my community. We can't spend dollars into existence. We can't organize
Still
labor
stuck in
for
the
300
currency.
million. We can't organize labor for 300 million
We
people.
can't. We
We
can't.
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 No, we can't. We can't.
Well, it's no
Seriously.
wonder why
It's
you
never been
don't.
done in history.
It's
It's
no
never
wonder
been
why
done
you
in
don't then.
history. Exactly, because it's impossible. Maybe
You
at some
can't.
point
You
in the
can't.
future, maybe at some point in the future we learn how to live without money. But for right now, money and state money is how we organize our resources
I
for the
know,
general
but
welfare.
that doesn't mean we shouldn't have a
This,
good discussion about how we can do it outside of it.
I already said I'm for the egalitarian issue, but
No,
it still
every time,
requires
no.
government
Every
money.
time I
It
just
still
barely,
requires
no,
government money.
stop. Every time I barely touch the concept, and I just barely get into it, and I can see by the comments everyone is completely misreading it because I don't get very far into it. You keep jumping back into how we need more money and we need more government and government's the authority and Freeman, how's your
You're
neighbor going
missing
to
the
do
point.
vaccines
Yeah,
and this guy's disabled,
that's
he
a
can't grow
fact.
food and someone
These are
can't grow food
facts
here
that you're
because
not
it's
addressing.
like you keep missing the overall picture. And so
And we're going to
it's
grow
like
food,
that
and
is the
everything's going to be
problem.
magically better. We're going to grow food, and everything's magically better. Is that
No,
what you're saying?
that's not what I'm saying.
Well, then what are you saying? Grow food and let the government kill people by starving us of money. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're right. You're right.
Well, okay. Well, I'm telling you, community gardens are not going to save lives. We need government to spend on society. We need
I
massive
didn't say community
industrial
gardens would save
output.
lives. Holy shit.
Okay, so how do we save lives? Tell me. How do we save the lives?
How
Every day,
long?
thousands of
How
people are
long do I have
dying
to answer your
without health
question?
care.
How long do I have to answer your question before you cut me off and tell me about how government is great again?
I'm not telling you government is great. Government is horrible right now because we
Okay.
don't make government work for us.
How long?
Okay, don't just
How
tell
long
me.
do I
I'll
have
give
to
you as
answer?
long as you need. How long do you need to tell me how we save lives? Every day, thousands are dying without health care. Thousands die of starvation, malnutrition. How as thousands die of drugs and air pollution? How do we stop these pointless suffering and death if we can't use government? How?
We empower communities to do it themselves.